Come on, demons. Come on, demons. Come on, demons. Come on, come on, come on, come on, demons. I've got this feeling, I know it's real.
Good evening, Demon fans, and welcome back. This is the season finale of the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and season 2019 is officially over. And whilst I mentioned that this will be our season finale, we will be back later in the year for a couple of special shows dissecting Trade Week in about 6 weeks' time, and then it's the National Draft in November. And yes, was a slightly new theme song. The sound quality is a little bit better than the original rip from VHS to YouTube to MP3. I managed to secure a copy of a cassette tape, if you guys remember those things. Tonight I'm rejoined by Grapeviney, who has come out of a self-imposed exiles to discuss Saturday's nail-biter in Tasmania. Good evening, Grapeviney.
Good evening, Andy. More so, I've come out to celebrate the fact that, thank God, it's finally over.
Yes.
Thank heavens. It just seemed to go on, and not a whole lot changed, unfortunately, in the second half of the season. So I think a lot of people perhaps had come to terms with the fact that the season was a write-off, but we're hoping to see things sort of turn the corner after the bye, and that didn't really happen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Although we had a decent three-quarter effort on the weekend against North.
And we will talk about that in a little bit more detail. But first, also joining us tonight after a few weeks on the sidelines, we got Demon historian and blogger, author of The Great Depression. You can follow him on Twitter at DemonBlog. He's known as Super Mikado on Demonland.com. Good evening, Super Mikado.
Oh, good evening, boys. Thank you for having me again. Yes, I must say, I'm almost sort of feeling nostalgic for footy season already. I could almost go a game this week. But now, unfortunately, we have to wait 6 months to find out whether this season was the fluke or last season was the fluke. And I think we're going to land somewhere probably right in the middle of the two, and we'll end up still back here next year unhappy, but potentially not as unhappy as we are now.
It's just really going to kill me watching these teams play in the finals, particular teams that, some of them maybe don't deserve to be them. I don't think Essendon do. But
this has been an excuse. If last year was an excuse for having more teams in the finals, this year's been an excuse for going back to a final five.
Yeah, I sort of had this thought that it's real. It's not a good advertisement for the what are they called, the wild card game, because
at the same time though, if they could line up, they would kill themselves for an Port Adelaide game in prime time to decide a token finals position that neither of them deserve. And unfortunately, the broadcasters are the ones that write the enormous check. So quality or not, I'm sure that's where we're heading in the next few years. Let's just try and get in once more in a legitimate final series before we have to get in via the back door.
You know what? I probably, if it was a final six and then they had, final five and then they had a wild card for the sixth spot, yeah, maybe I'd be more inclined. Especially if we were always hovering around that mark, then yes, definitely.
Which we usually are.
So,
when we were a finals team, we usually were. We obviously haven't been hovering around that position apart from a couple of years recently for a long time. Just think if they had a wild card round in 2017, we would have been saved the trauma of that weekend of the Collingwood and then West Coast Adelaide games. We wouldn't have missed the finals by the smallest margin in the history of the VFL-AFL competition. So how could we live without that?
That is true. If you would like to join us tonight on the program, give us a call, 0390163666, 0390163666. We love hearing from Demonlanders and listeners to the Demonland podcast, or give us a Skype at Demonland31. If you are listening to the show live, head over to our chat room at demonland.com/podcast. Ask us a question, make a comment. We do try to peruse the comments and bring them up if we do see them. If you're listening to this later on SoundCloud, on demonland.com, or via Apple or an Android podcasting app, give us a subscribe to receive updates when the episodes drop, and you can look out for some episodes, as I mentioned, during trade week and draft. We do like having that time of the year. It's favourite time of the year on Demonland. Head over to demonland.com. Check out our trade boards. There's lots of fun and games and over there at the moment with people wanting to give up nothing to get a lot, as happens every year.
Are you saying we can't package 6 different, rookie players and get the best player in the league, get Nat Fyfe out of Freo?
Well, if according to Demonland, yes, we can do that.
I haven't been onto the trade board yet, but has anyone offered up Matt Jones as part of a deal? And can you still do that?
It would be nice if we could. Well,
who is the new person in that? Because I remember for a while it was Brad Miller. It was his last couple of years. It was Brad Miller to anybody for Jonathan Brown, and then it turned into Matt Jones. Have we got a scapegoat now? I think not a scapegoat as such, but Oscar McDonald seems to be thrown into a lot of potential trades. Where, no offence to Oscar, he's been in pretty bad form this year. I don't think other clubs are going to be falling over themselves to be cutting trade deals to bring him into their side. But again, if you ask the people on the forums, it's him out, it's Patrick Dangerfield in.
It's the same sort of logic that says Melbourne should get rid of Goodwin as quickly as it can, and hoping in the same breath that Adelaide are going to pick him up on a long-term contract because they're keen to secure his services. So not a good coach for us, but definitely a good coach for them. So that's Demonland logic for you, though.
Well, it's not just Demonland. Let's not tar Demonland with that brush.
No, that's true.
It is the whole social media spectrum. And you see at this time of year all the the journalists, so-called journalists. There was an article. There was an article where they listed all the prospective trades this year, and I think they listed almost 90% of the league is up for trade to one club or another, or has been linked to one club or another. But you know what? We're not ready to talk trades just yet. Let's talk about this game. We've got one more game to get through. Talking about one goal 7 in the last quarter just typified our year. That final kick from Nibbler that rolled and hit the post just perfectly summed up the year. Just close, but so far away.
It did, and look, the whole quarter summed up the year. I lost count of the number of kicks which came out of defence that either went out on the full or directly to a North player. It seemed about 15 minutes where the ball just kept bouncing in and out. It was a terrible way to finish what had, a game that had arguably had some of our best passages of play for the year. So very disappointing way to finish the season. Not that a win would have salvaged too much, but yeah.
It would have helped at least give us something to enjoy. We wouldn't have, been jumping up and down and, declaring ourselves premiership certainties next year. But it would have been nice in a game where it meant absolutely nothing for our ladder position just to get a win. You can't trust a round 23 dead rubber. You can't trust a round 23 game against a team going to the finals usually because the pin gets pulled in spectacular fashion. But even then, and I agree, some of our play was the best we've seen all season, but you don't know whether that's North being half interested, our guys trying to have one more bash, or actually something legitimately to look forward to next year. But I agree that there was no more Melbourne 2019 way to lose that game. The only way that could have been worse would have been if Melksham had run into the goalpost and seriously injured himself. That's the only way I can see that would be a more Melbourne game. Throwing a lead at the end, doing a beautiful piece of movement from one end to the other, burning a player in the right in front of goal who probably could have run in a better way to the goal, who was complaining before the ball had even landed that it didn't go to him. It was great. It was very Melbourne on brand. And it was, unfortunately, the third game we've now played in Hobart and the third game we've lost by under a goal.
Yeah, it is very depressing that ground for us hasn't been.
And I've got to say, you mentioned the Nibbler kick on goal. You've got to also mention the Jones.
I was coming to that.
The Jones kick off half back, and Look, you can't see everything on the telly, and that's how I presume all of us saw it. I did read one account from someone who was at the ground that said that there was no one at the boundary line, which is where the Jones kick should have gone. But either way, it's an indictment on his teammates for not getting to the spot where the kick needed to go, and certainly an indictment on Jones for ultimately kicking it where he did. It's just a disaster.
I mean, all year that's what we've been doing. We've been going down the line, much to the annoyance sometimes of some people who would prefer us to probably play down the corridor at times. But that's the way we've been playing, and he did go in and he's kicked it straight to an opposition player. I thought for the most part Jones gets a lot of criticism. He's had a lot of criticism in the latter part of the year. People are ready for him, want him to hang up the boots. I don't know where I sit yet with that, but I liked him playing as a half forward, and I think if he does go on next year, I think I'd prefer him to play as a half forward and not as a half back. I thought he was better at half forward than he has been at half back.
I think he'll still go on. I think he's still got at least another year left in him.
Yeah, I think so too. And by the sounds of it, again, as we discussed a few weeks ago, you can never trust the stories that get in the press because it's usually one side leaking against the other. But I think if it was a 1-year contract they offered him with triggers, I think that's perfectly fair at the moment. I don't want to lose him. I think he should go on for one more year with us. But if some manager or him or whoever thinks they're going to get 3 years at this stage, they'd be kidding themselves. But I do agree that I thought he was played much better in the role he played last week than when he was playing off the back line. But at the same time, I really think the confidence was just shot. Like, there's no way he's going to go on as captain next year, I wouldn't have thought. And let's see if that causes a controversy when they try and switch it. But I think it's best for him if he's going to go on for a year, just to go on for at least another year without the captaincy and the media and all that side. Just let him go out and play footy.
So we've talked about this in the last couple of weeks in terms of the captaincy. Great Viney, what do you want to see next year in terms of captaincy? A lot of people calling to go Gawn solo, give him the responsibility as a leader. Where do you see it falling next year?
I'd be happy with that. I don't know about the optics then of
that's a problem.
Jack losing the captaincy. I think it's fine to take it off Nathan, and I wouldn't be surprised if he sort of comes forward and does that anyway. Look, I think they might be able to take it away from Viney behind the excuse of he's had an injury, interrupted 2 seasons, and let's focus on getting him regularly out on the park and in top form before he goes back into a leadership role. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. But I agree that Jones, I don't think, will be in the role next year. And Binman points out in the chat room says that his body language is awful. And I don't know whether I'd describe it as bad as awful, but I think he's struggled a bit this year.
Definitely flat body language. And I guess that's going to happen when you've gone through so much. You've had one up year, and then suddenly, as your career starts winding down, the team bottoms out, at least for 1 year. Yep. I can understand why it would be, and I think he's done so much over the years that I can let him do that and still go on for at least one more year. I don't think you just shove him out the door, James McDonald style, just because he's had one average year. I think as long as he recognises the situation that's going into next year, where just like Lewis, just like Vince, but obviously with a lot more emotion behind it than those two, you're not guaranteed a game. You're not necessarily going to play every single game of the seniors. As long as he understands that, then that's fine. I think we go on. But I think like McDonald, should he leave, it will be very sad, but he will leave with the respect of all the Melbourne fans. If he goes to Gold Coast, I'll be there. I'll go to a Gold Coast game. I'm not going to more than one, but I will go to a Gold Coast game just to pay tribute to him because he's been such a great servant for the club.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's more likely to play on next year with the proviso that he might spend time at KC, and I agree that he'll be the one to give up the captaincy rather than have it be sort of unceremoniously taken off him. He'll give it up if that's the case. Viney, that's a different story. I agree with the optics. I think perhaps the only way they can do it is under the guise of the injury interrupted things. But I don't know. I'd like to see Max as solo captain. It's nothing against Viney and what he's done. I just think maybe we need a change and we need to be ballsy and do something different. I don't know. But on Viney alone, I thought he was this week, he was quite effective in a tagging role. I thought he really curbed Cunnington. He reduced his influence. Perhaps should we turn Viney into a tagger? I know we did it a bit with Harms last year and early this year. Maybe Viney is best as a tagger because he hasn't been so effective on his own this year.
He can mix it up.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's that versatility there. Yeah. And you're right, he did play one of his better games for the year on the weekend. But how good was Max?
Well, that's...
and you talk about dominating a game. In every way, he impacted. So it was just a stellar performance from start to finish.
Gordon, he was unbelievable. He deserves his All-Australian nomination, and I hope that tomorrow night the selectors do the right thing and have him in the team. I have no doubt that Grundy is going to get the first ruck nod, and whether anyone agrees with that or not, I think that's what's going to happen. And even though there is a case for Maxi to have his spot, I think the wider football community has called this one. I'll be extremely disappointed if Max doesn't get a spot on the bench, and I called this weeks ago, but I have a feeling he is going to miss out on the team, and I bloody hope I'm wrong.
Ruzi left him out of his final 22 on the couch last night, which was interesting.
Was he trying to be controversial? Some of the...
No. He said if he was picking a team to play, then he would definitely have picked Max.
Yep.
And he acknowledged it was very much a line ball call, but he gave the nod to Grundy.
Super Mikado.
Which I think proves your point, Andy, that I think he might miss out too.
Yeah, I really think he will. Unfairly, yeah, I agree. Super Mikado, thoughts on...
Well, obviously I agree. Grundy's going to be in there, and because he plays for a more popular team that's won more games this year and is a good player, he will be the starting ruckman. But I guess, they don't usually pick two ruckmen because this team's got to go play a game somewhere, apparently in cyberspace or something.
Well, they did pick two last year, admittedly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that when you've got two great ruckmen like this, that it really would make sense to put Max on the bench. But the moment I saw we didn't have any other players in the 40, I was just like, I don't want to look who else is in contention. So I couldn't give you a intellectual view on why Max should be in the side, but gut feeling is that you've got a player that he has carried the team on his back this year so much that if you spent more than 5 minutes watching Melbourne, you would understand why Max Gawn deserves to be in that side. And it's like you look at the people over the years, Gary Ablett, I'm not suggesting Max and Gary Ablett are by any stretch of imagination the same player, but Ablett, when he was with Gold Coast and they were terrible the first time around, and he was making the All-Australian team, it was because he carried that team on his shoulders. So, again, I think if you just sit down and watch, and if you look at the stats as well.
He won a Brownlow as well.
Yeah. He is a midfielder.
Yeah.
That it helps. If you look at the stats as well, so you take the gut feeling, you take the watching, you take the stats, and it all points to Max being such an influential player that I think I'm not one to get upset about all Australians because pretty much we haven't had anyone in contention for the best part of 10 years, apart from Max. But I think it would be criminal if he didn't get a run in the side. But show me the side and show me who knocks him out, and then I might have a different opinion.
You mentioned we didn't have anyone else in the team. Clayton Oliver, I don't think he's had his best year this year, but he did lead the league in contested possession, 359, next Fife, 351, Lockie Neal, 350, Patrick Cripps, 339, Cunnington, 337, and Boak, 308. All of those guys made the squad, not Clayton Oliver. And
no, I don't. Sorry.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting him to this year, but you have a look at, he's up there in the stats.
Yeah, I don't think his form warranted inclusion this year, even in the squad of 40. I thought,
I agree.
His disposal was nowhere near as good as it was last year. And for some strange reason, he seemed really rushed a lot of the time. And we know how quick he is with his hands, but he sort of seemed to be playing at breakneck final speed, even in games where everything was sort of really slow around him. So, he seemed to be, he was sort of slightly off the boil, I thought, this year, despite, as you say, racking up pretty good numbers.
Is it his fault that no one else can keep up with him? I guess he's...
Well, if you're the one getting all the contested possessions, you've still got to do something with them.
That's true.
And I think he was a lot looser this year, with his disposal. I still thought he was very good. I would suggest that he's going to probably finish behind Max in the best and fairest again. But at the same time, on a league, compared to other players around the league, I think no issue at all with him not making the 40.
Maxi for the game, mammoth stats for the big man, 26 disposals, 20 contested, 8 marks, 4 of those contested, 41 hit-outs against the league's probably the third best ruckman perhaps, with 24 hit-outs. He's had 10 clearances, 5 inside 50s, 3 goals, 1, negotiating that difficult breeze, and I'm not sure if the breeze sort of inadvertently helped Max or whether they were intentional goals, but mammoth game from the big man.
Yeah, almost faultless.
Yeah.
Almost faultless.
Another highlight for me was Bailey Fritsch. He's our lone forward target at the moment. He kicked 3 goals, 2. Took a beautiful contender for Mark of the Year. I'm still shaking my head as to why we played him in defence for so long when he was drafted as forward. He's clearly a forward. 20 goals, 16 for the year. Once he was moved forward in the last 7 rounds, he kicked 16 goals, 13, 3 times kicking 3 or more, 5 times kicking 2 or more. Clearly he should have been forward and will only blossom with T-Mac and Weed in the team, I think, beside him.
Yep, amen to all of that.
I don't think he's going back anytime soon. He's very good with contested marks, and I love contested marks. Yep. They're almost behind goals. Contested marks are my favourite. I think they're the most honest stat of them all because it doesn't rely on anybody else and what anybody else does. It's taking that one-on-one or one-on-many against opposition players, and I think you can really judge something when you see players that have contested marks. Some of them you expect. You expect Gawn. You expect Bruce, who had a few on the weekend. You expect Frost to have them. But to have a player like Fritsch take contested marks is invaluable. You look at the contested mark leaders in the competition and you have to go down a long way, but then you find it's players like Fife. Like Nat Fife seems to take great contested marks around the ground and is a star. Now, Fritsch might not reach that level by any means, but it's such a vital tool to have that player that's a half forward who can take a contested mark and not have to rely on the tools to do it all the time.
Yeah, I think you're right. He's elite in that category, and particularly for his size.
Yeah.
But his ability to read the ball and know where it's going to be and get in the right position is second to none.
And also to contest. When he doesn't take it, he puts in a good contest, which I think it frustrates all of us when you get a kick to a one-on-one, even to a one-on-two, where the player just gets beaten, all ends up, and the other side take a mark. I have more faith that Fritsch will at least get a hand to it or, crash a pack, maybe not crash it with too much force because of his size, but go to make some kind of pressure on the opposition, which is something I think we lacked a hell of a lot this year.
Yeah, the guys really love him. Doesn't have much meat on him and can take those great marks. Moving on, I thought Frost did a great job on Ben Brown, whose 2 goals came from a downfield free kick and a mark on the lead from a quick turnover where we just couldn't feel the hole in front of him. I thought we did a great job targeting him, putting him off his game by having Lever as the third man up. I can't recall us sort of doing that. We were a bit physical with him as well. We haven't done that in a long time where we've targeted a player. And I take a little bit of solace in the fact that we stopped him from winning the Coleman medal. I was worried last week that he'd kick 10 plus. Yeah, I was one of those people that said that. There were people calling the naysayers out on Demonland this week, and I was one that thought he would absolutely destroy us, and I'm glad we were able to curb his influence on the game.
Yep. Look, Frost continues to be Mr. Dangerous, both for and against his own team. Yes. And I suspect that will continue for the duration of his career. I don't think it can be sort of managed. It is what it is, and he is what he is. So you take the good with the bad.
Absolutely. And I think that him and Lever should swap paychecks for this year, because he does the intercept marking, but then he actually has an attacking benefit as well. And yes, sometimes it goes haywire, but a lot of the times it also just gets the ball away from our goal, which is where the best place to get it away from. And whereas Lever seems to be great in the air, decent positioning, all that kind of stuff, but at the moment, his turnovers and his kicking has been pretty poor. So hopefully whatever is ailing him will sort itself out next year. But I think I would have Frost ahead of him if you asked me to pick a backman to put in your team.
Yeah, I thought Lever's disposal was really frustrating. His intercept marking's good and just spoiling, but that he's got to do something about that disposal. It's costly.
I think that'll just come with a bit more game time. If you remember last year, once he started really poorly and he was turning the ball over left, right and centre at the beginning of last year. But then once he sort of settled into a rhythm, his disposal was actually very good. So I'm not too fussed about it at the moment.
And it's also having someone to kick it to. Like we watch it on TV and we can sort of see what's going on. But when he gets the ball and looks up, and if you've got no one to kick it to and you're trying to thread the eye of the needle to hit someone on the boundary, that's the last thing you want with the backman, because most of the time they're not the people you want kicking the ball. So it's about the structure of the side as well.
Yep. Jordan Lewis certainly has he's had his naysayers over on Demonland and on social media, I've noticed over the years. However, I think he's provided us with great on-field leadership when he hasn't been missing games through suspension. We're going to miss the toughness. I thank him for his time at the Demons and on a great career. And those 4 premierships experience we will miss as well.
Yeah, and I think he's actually played really well particularly in the latter half of the year. So, you can't say that he's going out on a high note given given the season that we've had. But personally, absolutely walking out with his head held high and still playing pretty good senior footy. So, yeah, well done.
George and the Outer and I Super Mercado before you. Jordan on the Outer.
I was just going to say, look, I wasn't crazy about him this year at all, but I think we got good value for what we paid, which was pretty much nothing, and played a very important role in the first 2 seasons. And then this year, I don't think I probably wouldn't have bought him back from the reserves midway through the season. But for what we paid for him, we definitely got good value.
Well, I think we bought him. George and I were saying last week we did bring him back because of out of necessity. We've had 16 players on the injury list come round 22. He was fit and had the experience. I think we needed to bring him back. I think if we had that full list, he probably wouldn't have come back once he was out of the team. But the year is what it was in terms of cattle on the field, and he was a man standing. So, well,
I suppose it's hard to play kids when you don't have any.
Yeah. Once again, we smashed it in the clearances, 47-29. Centre was 16-10, and stoppages around the ground 31-19. Yeah, once again, we can't make the most of these first touches and find avenues to goal. Costly again. And
sorry.
Yeah, go on. You go.
The biggest thing that annoyed me on the weekend, and we've seen this all year and even in previous years, was the flocking of all players to the one man or to the one contest, leaving North runners and mids on the outside. God, it makes, and if you look in the game day thread, it makes all of us tear our hair out. And you just wonder how, I guess that's the lack of cohesion and connection that Goodwin's spoken about.
It cost us the game in the end because in that last bit of play, sort of all the players flocked to the ball and they were able to flick it out to Higgins, and Higgins could have even given it to Krusty the Clown. Ben Brown, and because he was out by himself as well, but it did cost us the game. It's usually harder to score at that ground against the wind, yet we kicked 10 goals into the wind and only 2 goals with it. So let's go work that one out.
I think that happened last time. It didn't happen the first time. The first time when we had that 140 to 135 spectacular, a lot of that was drawn on the wind. But I'm pretty sure last time when we needed to win to boost our finals credentials in 2017, we kicked more goals into the wind than with it.
Yeah, we had a good third quarter, and that which was against the wind last time, and then we were going with the wind.
Last quarter.
And then,
where have I heard that recently?
It was almost carbon copy. Turnovers. Our penchant for turnovers this year has been extremely costly. It was costly again this week. We gave the ball back to the opposition for 53 points from turnovers. They, in contrast, they scored 7. We only scored 17 points from North Melbourne's turnovers. So that's 53 points to 17. I know we've just really got, I don't know how they work on this, but they've just got to reduce those turnovers. It's something that needs to be worked on in the off-season. How you do that, I don't know. But perhaps a few delistings might assist in this area.
Yeah, and a few additions to the list, particularly in terms of a pressure forward, would also assist. Petraka's one who has the ability and has created turnovers in our forward 50, but and I know we'll mention Jeffy perhaps in a moment, but since Jeffy sort of left the team, probably midway through last season, we haven't really had that facet of our game at all.
Forward pressure is a real issue for us, in particular with our small brigade. Melksham, Neil Bullen, Hunt, Corey Wagner could only manage one tackle each, and yep, that's what we've got to do. We need someone.
And look, some of them can't tackle at all.
Yeah.
Spargo is barely big enough to lay a tackle, and Stretch is barely strong enough to lay a tackle. And Nibbler struggles with it too. So, look, Melksham is stronger, but those other guys, even if they do get their hands or arms on an opponent, they rarely bring them to ground.
Yeah, and there's a lot of broken tackles. I would hate to see the stat on how many times players are just shrugged off.
Yep.
Where do we find stats like that? Do they even keep those stats? Because
Champion Data would have broken tackles or missed tackles in their big super package of stats, I'm sure.
We'll have to keep an eye out on that.
And Jaden Hunt's not a great tackler either. I should have added his name to that list too.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing, because when you've got someone who can run quickly, if you combine running quickly and tackling, you've practically got 2004 Aaron Davey, if you can put wacky goals and shots from the boundary line in there as well. But, what's the point in having a quick guy if he can't lay a tackle?
Can we say goodbye to Jeffy now?
Oh yeah, we can. I was going to at some point mention the two delistings that happened today. Was it only two in the end? It was Jeff Garlett and Declan Kelty. We've had our friend of the show, Declan's brother, Drunken 697. I can't remember what the numbers
167.
Look, I think the writing on the wall for Declan was there a few weeks ago when we had not one key forward and he was playing at Casey. So I think we thought at that time that he wouldn't play for the D's next year. He's been delisted, and Jeffy, I think we all thought he was going to go at the end of the year. But thank you for the 180 goals that he kicked for us.
Yeah. Well, that's like you can't argue the value we got from pick 60-something for Garlett.
Was it pick 60 or was it in the 80s?
I think it was in the 80s.
Like 88 or something.
Or 83. But can I just point out Jeffy's career stats? Very interesting numbers. Played 185 games for 321 goals. Cyril Rioli played 189 games for 275 goals. So Cyril played 4 more games, yet Jeffy kicked nearly 50 goals more than Cyril over the course of their careers. So whichever way you look at it, those numbers stack up pretty well for Jeffy. So congratulations on a super career. And he, at both clubs, played some really exciting footy. And for us, he did it at a time when we were still struggling. So, very grateful for that. And you think back to the days of Jesse Hogan with Jeffy at the feet. Makes you pine for it when you consider the slim pickings we had up forward for most of the year.
Yeah, it certainly didn't get any better than his first season, but the 40 goals he kicked in 2015, by the standards of how we were scoring that year, it was pretty much, I think 2015 and this year were quite similar in our scoring. So if you think that we had a top goal kicker who kicked 22 this year, the 40 he kicked that year, 40 goals, 31, was a sensational contribution. And after that, he kicked more goals a couple of years later, but I think that, which was great, but I think his actual contribution to that forward line peaked in that first year and then, ebbed and flowed through the next 4 seasons after that. But, fantastic value and very much appreciated.
Garlett, we got Garlett and pick 83 for pick 61 and 79. So that was pretty good, I think. I think we got the better end of the
We also got the
way.
chance to infuriate Carlton supporters. Remember there was that time where everyone was just tallying up how many goals Waite, Betts and Garlett were kicking at their respective clubs, while Carlton were kicking, Melbourne-like scores of 4 goals, 6 and the like.
I think they had tripled or quadrupled the amount of goals that Carlton had kicked that year that they did that.
Yes. Yep.
What else did I have on there? How upset were you at the end of the game when we lost? Did you? I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but I wasn't upset as I thought I would be. Like, not that I didn't want to win the game, but I think in the end, I won't say happy that we lost, but I wanted, I didn't want people to go out and say on a high for the year. I want this season to burn for everyone, players, supporters, everyone, so that we go into next year. I didn't want the pain to be eased by having a junk time win. Is that an unpopular opinion?
Not with me. Look, I struggle to care about it, to be honest. I think you're a step ahead and more honest, more honest than I am. So
I think I was a step behind because I just had the natural reaction of wanting to see Melbourne win. And at the start, I didn't take the game seriously whatsoever. I woke up pretty much on bounce time because I'd been working overnight the night before and lay in bed watching it on a phone for the first half. And second half, I thought, I've got to get up and watch this properly. This is just ridiculous. I've watched previously 5 losses since I moved into this house. I was like, maybe I can get 1 win in this house before the end of the season. And then the natural reaction to a Melbourne game had me jumping around and swearing and yelling and throwing myself on the ground even when the kick missed at the end and it was going to be a draw. But then what is telling is that about 20 minutes later I was like, who cares? Doesn't matter. So it wasn't like the Adelaide game, which I was still upset about halfway through the next week. This was just like, at the time, I just had that natural reaction. But then once it was over, it was like, doesn't matter. I would have been quite happy for a win. I was kind of mentally, when we were 15 points up in the third quarter, thinking, how are we going to annoy people by the players being half happy at winning and singing the song and stuff like that? How are we going to get, kicked to death by the joyless anti-fun league people like Chris Judd and Caroline Wilson, who were saying, "Oh no, the players shouldn't be happy after winning a game in that season. They should have all gone off and boiled themselves in oil in the change rooms."
Look,
out of sheer embarrassment at the season they've played.
Look, I think you phrased it better. That we're 15 points up. I wasn't saying, I wasn't starting to barrack for North or anything. I'm just saying that once we lost, I didn't feel like I did against Adelaide or against West Coast or any of those close losses we've had. I was able to peruse social media afterwards without wanting to sort of throw my phone out the window. But I think
I blew a fuse in the last 10 minutes of the St Kilda game, and then the rest of the season was just like not even the Sydney game. It was just disgraceful. But it was kind of like, who cares? It just let this season get over with now. So I didn't have that big explosion in me. It was already gone.
What do you guys think? You were talking about the fun police, like the Chris Judds and Caroline Wilsons, wanting them to sort of burn for the year. Someone, I can't remember whether it was Kane Corns, criticised Gold Coast for yakking it up with their Mad Monday celebrations. I haven't seen it. I don't know if Melbourne has had their celebrations yet. I haven't seen anything on social media, and I know on Demonland there was a thread about it, and people were wanting Melbourne, wanting not to see sort of that imagery or the optics of the players celebrating the year. So where do you fall on that? We understand players need the break and all that, but do you want to see those optics of them sort of celebrating a year?
Personally,
whether Melbourne or Gold Coast or anywhere.
Personally, it doesn't affect me at all. I think that they live in a bubble all year and get slaughtered from every angle. Just because they go out and have fun for one day doesn't mean that they aren't burning about what's going to happen in the pre-season and what just happened in the season. Now, I wonder, have we actually had any confirmation that Melbourne still do the costume thing since the great Alex Giorgio, Dean Turlich fiasco of about 5 years ago? I can't remember. I don't seek it out, so maybe I've just missed it, but I don't remember seeing Melbourne players in kooky costumes since that day.
Yeah, look, I differ a little bit. I don't like the optics of it, and I'd respect a playing group that has the maturity to say we had a poor year, and yes, we can celebrate the end of the season, but we're going to do it quietly and privately rather than create a circus in public.
But can they still wear a wacky costume privately? Can I still come dressed as a pirate if it's private? I
always thought that costume, which I think started with Geelong doing it. I think they were the first club to sort of do that, and they did it for years or whatever. And I think they do it, I guess, to be seen. I'm not sure. Other clubs have copied that and do that as a way to have some fun, blow off some steam. But you would think that they would dress up to be seen. They're not. Are they doing it for themselves, or are they doing it to get on camera?
I think it peaked when Richmond buggered up that final, kicking into the wind in Adelaide, and Trent Cotchin was interviewed dressed as one of the members from Kiss the next day, and he was doing a serious interview with Kiss makeup on. I think that was just the end. Just wrap it up after that.
Images from football.
I don't think I would recall that.
I think the whole costume thing is bullshit. I'd just like to point that out. I think it's just stupid, but I just think if they want to do that behind closed doors and say, look, who's going to show up, and Max Gawn's come dressed as a goblin or something like that, that's fine. But I agree that not going down Swanston Street dressed as Hari Krishna's trying to get on the TV news, that would certainly be inappropriate. And who knows? I don't even know how this Gold Coast image, if someone put it on Instagram or something like that, and then allowed professional anti-fun league rising star Kane Corns to have a sook about that. I don't know if that was meant to be public or not, but it doesn't seem that now teams go right out of their way to be seen like the Geelong team were a few years ago, when they were like really basically walking down the street of Geelong in their costumes. And fair enough, because they
winning premierships.
Yeah. Whereas now, if you had the Melbourne list come down your street dressed in costume, you'd probably throw something at them. But I think behind the scenes, if they're going to if they're going to be drinking themselves into a coma, it's no issue to me whether they're dressed as dragons or just dressed in their normal clothes. But I agree that keeping it out of the public, and I'm pretty sure we've learnt that lesson since that the Turlich Giorgio fiasco, not to go out and really spruik that you're doing it is a better way to go.
Well, it was a disaster of a year. We only won 5 games. We beat 9th position, 13th position, 15th, 16th and 18th. We could have easily have lost 4 of those, the Hawthorn game, Freo, Carlton and the Suns. We could have lost those. We were down, and one of the other ones, the other one we won, we were down by 22 against the Swans. Could have easily have lost that, but we did have a spirited fight back. I guess you can make the case that we could have won the Eagles game twice, the Adelaide game and even the Kangaroos game, but of the games we won, could have lost. It could have been an even bigger disaster of a year had those results, some of those results not gone our way.
Yeah,
probably
swings and
balanced a bit.
roundabouts.
We probably got lucky a couple of times and unlucky a couple of times, and we should be exactly where we are.
Yep.
Super Mercado, I noted you said that in the last 5 games that we've led at 3/4 time, we've then kicked 5 goals, 23 in the last quarter, and lost 4 of those games. We've got to fix up this kicking.
And the Carlton one. Yeah, the Carlton one I can kind of right. That was only about 1 goal 3, and we had no one on the bench. So even if you take that out and say for the 4 games, that's 4 goals 20. And a lot of that was from the Adelaide game and the weekend combined, which I think would have been 2-15 between them. But this is where I see, you go out and you get Darren Burgess and you say, oh, yay, Darren Burgess, here comes time for physical fitness. And I just asked the same question I asked Mark Neild himself at the 2013 or 12, whenever it was, crisis meeting with supporters they had at Amy Park. What's the psychological side of this? What do we have for players to work on their mental fitness as well as their physical fitness? And now I don't want to destroy the confidence of a meeting that occurred 7 years ago, but Mark Neild said, we don't need that because if the players have a problem, they can talk to a coach. Mm-hmm. And it's to my regret all these years later that I didn't argue that point more, that was the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. But even now, I think they do have a psychologist on staff, which they didn't in the past. But I'd be really interested in where they are going with the players mentally with A, the big letdown this season, and B, the absolute proof that we have choked games spectacularly this season in the last quarter. What are they doing to address that? Or is it just a case of we just think that the process will work, we'll come back next year, we'll be fitter, we'll have less injuries, we'll tweak the game plan, we'll have different assistant coaches, and then everything will just flow from there. I would like to see, it's one of those things that I don't even want to know what's happening. I just want to know that something's happening. I don't expect the club to tell me, here's Sam Frost's mental health plan, but I just want to know that they are working on that side of things to make sure that we are a little less flaky next season. So I think that would be something I'd be really interested in finding out, because I think we've moved well beyond the point of if players are upset, they can have a chat with an assistant coach. Probably because at the moment they won't find any because they've all been sacked. But I'd like to know what we're doing that, because I think, physical fitness is great and it's so important, but the mental fitness side of it, especially in a year where doubts are going to be not only creeping in, doubts have stormed in the door, that we need to get the players back confident before next year, or we're going to be starting behind the 8 ball.
How much of it is physical fatigue and mental fatigue, that 5-23 scoreline in those close games?
I guess you'd have to sit down and look at all 23 to know what's what. I think the fact that I would have to look at what the average is on games. So if you take 5 games, well, let's take out the Carlton game because that was different because of the injuries. But if you say 4 goals 20, that's 24 scoring shots, 6 scoring shots per quarter, which in the current day is probably almost on average. So it's not a terrible result. So you'd have to go back and look at the points. You've got, I think the Adelaide game, even without Wiedemann's miss at the end, there was a lot of point blank misses in that game. And then this on Saturday, there was a lot of point-blank misses in the last quarter there as well. So I think we're making the chances and we're staying in games. We didn't get blown away, apart from the Geelong game, which I can't even remember what quarter we got totally smashed in. We didn't get blown away in games this year. We pulled back, admittedly with the other team putting the cue in the rack. We pulled back a bit against Sydney, got GWS, the Collingwood the second time. So we were running games out okay. So I'm not sure if you can get a player on the field. I don't think the fitness was too bad, but obviously that can be improved. That can always be improved. So I think confidence is a large part of it as well. And I would say leadership as well. And I think that's where people have been pretty critical about our on-field leadership. Even last season, I remember people being critical about it. People were critical about a lot of things last year, but it all got swept up in that excitement of September. And we sort of pretended that everything was going to be like the first two finals and not round 20 when we were trying to smash the joint after we lost to Sydney. I think that's the on-field leadership of having players there who can settle everyone down and refocus them is also really important. And I do feel that we lack that. And again, I'd love to talk to someone from the inner sanctum, even if it was off the record, just to understand more of this and understand what's going on within the group, because this is what it looks like from the outside, but it might not be the same on the inside.
The Demonland Player of the Year was congratulations to Max Gawn taking it out in front of Clayton Oliver and James Harms, with Christian Salem and Angus Brayshaw rounding out the top five. Super Mikado, your votes, how did that turn out? I'm assuming Max took it out in the end.
Well, I'm very happy that my votes have been certified by the readers of Demonland.com, because I had exactly the same top three. And I had Salem fourth, but then Viney fifth.
Oh, Viney was sixth for us, so only seven.
And where did Petraka finish in both?
Okay, I will go down my list. We had Brayshaw at 5, Viney 6, Fritsch 7, Sam Frost 8, Christian Petraka 9, and not much between like those 7, 8, 9, and then Nathan Jones was 10 behind Petraka in 10th place.
And I had Petraka equal sixth with Fritsch, who came hard at the end, and Melksham, who came hard at the start. And Petraka just landed on level with them at the end.
Gee, I was surprised that Angus Brayshaw rated so highly. I thought he had a very poor season, and I'd be surprised if Petraka doesn't get a top 5 finish in the BNF.
Yeah, I think Petraka gets I think a lot of harsh criticism, and I agree with you. I'm surprised with Brayshaw. I actually had some notes on him. I'm positive he's carrying something. Didn't get out of a trot at times. So I'm hoping that's not an attitude thing, and not that I wish an injury on him, but I hope that there is an injury excuse somewhere there.
Yeah, I had developing this incredible habit of handballing either to nobody or directly to the opposition. He's just disposing sort of almost without thought or sight sometimes.
He's not the only one. He's not the only one.
His inside 50 kicks are just diabolical. It's almost like you just kick it down there and hope for the best. So whoever turns out to be our assistant coaches next year, that has to be one of their key projects to get him going again. Now, I think it gets multiplied by the fact that he came third in the Brownlow, which is stupid, because at the same time we all abuse the Brownlow because they won't give votes to Gawn or they won't give votes to defenders. So we can't be too keen on saying, well, he finished in third in the Brownlow, so ... But we all know he had a good season last year, and he was much more damaging and looked much more confident last year, and something's happened this year. So that has to be one of their key jobs next year to get him going again.
Let's move on. Positives from the year. I'll go ask both of you. Great Viney, do you want to start off? What were your positives for the year?
Well, the aforementioned Christian Petraka, who I thought definitely played his best season and started to really, impact some games, and even tidied up his kicking, perhaps, as the year went on, I think. The return of Fritsch to the forward line, the continued domination of Max, Frost's development. and I've got to say it's pretty slim pickings after that. Christian Salem had a very good first half of the year, but I thought he finished quite poorly and seemed to be very lazy, even with his disposal, which is something that he's normally celebrated for.
Super.
Obviously gone. It's very hard to find 22-week positives apart from Gawn. I agree with Grapeviney that Salem's first half of the year was excellent.
Yep.
Fritch's end to the season was excellent. Melksham's start to the year was excellent before he got injured. I did, when we could get him on the park, I thought Stephen May was excellent. But by the time he was on the park, we were already shot. And then he was going off the park injured more often than not. So I really, especially that first quarter of the Collingwood game, that was like such... I wanted him to be the captain that day for the first quarter of that Collingwood game, which is silly when you've got Gawn in front of him. But he was just such a leader in that back line and putting his body on the line so much that I really enjoyed watching him play. But that's the problem. We didn't get to watch him play enough. And again, I thought Hunt, first half of the season, that was a positive, but just went missing by the end of the season, which I don't think is a great sign for his future, because I don't think he's playing in the back line. He's not going to be in the back line. So if he can't find a role in the forward line, he's going to be in trouble. And I apologise that this was supposed to be positives, but I haven't really got that many other than that. Like it's been one of those years. Marty Hoare.
Yeah, he was a good find.
Again, end of the year though, when he came back, I think he just got caught in the general malaise of the whole place. Yeah. But what I thought was when the first time when Jetta was injured, he looked like he was going to be able to play that role. So you sort of think if Nev lasts, 2 years or whatever more, that Hoare should be able to take his spot in the team. So it's a good development opportunity for the future. Otherwise, I thought Dunkley showed a little bit, especially that game. I think it was the Collingwood game where he took about 10 marks. I think he's put a pre-season in him, and he'll be very useful next year. Otherwise, I agree. Frost was exciting.
Jay Lockhart showed a bit too.
Yeah, I would like to have seen more of him, possibly in the last couple of weeks. And I think that if you just take a positive on what the expectation would have been, I actually really liked Corey Wagner this season. I'm not sure if that's the kind of player who's going to still be in the team if we're a really good team next year, or even a mid-table team next year. But I thought he did a few really nice things. I gave him votes twice, and he got dropped both times. So shows that I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to football. So he finished on 2 votes in my award. Petty.
Yeah, that was going to be my add-on to what you guys.
I think it's a shame. It's a shame he got hurt.
Yeah.
Those last couple of weeks, because I really wanted to finish the season with him playing forward, because I think now... Well,
he had the opportunity, because with the 2 forwards out, that was his opportunity to show.
Yeah, now we hit next year where, let's just pretend, God forbid, we get all our players to round 1. You got May, Lever, Frost in the back line. You got Wiedemann, McDonald presumably in the forward line. Does he still get a chance or not? The question is, does he sort of play forward next year, and one of the 3, McDonald, Wiedemann or Petty, goes to intensive ruck school in the off-season to take that role that Bruce played off occasionally this year, and then we just play with those 3 as all forwards. I think Petty's marking was great. One way or the other, we've got to find a way to get him into the team, just because he can take a strong contested mark. And as previously discussed, I love a good contested mark. So I think those few weeks, look, his goal kicking was pretty much as you would expect from a guy that had been a key defender about 2 days before he first played as a key forward. But you couldn't argue with those big marks.
Yep, absolutely agree. There was another thing we were going to talk about, but I guess we've covered sort of a lot of that. Was what gives you hope for next year? But I think the fact that we might get a lot of players back from injury is probably the biggest.
I mean, how do you know how to judge it until that happens? And look, I never thought. Actually, I won't say I never thought we were a top 4 team. I probably thought we were a top 4 team in the until 2019 ticked over, and then when the reality of the players we're going to be missing I put us down to 5th. So I would say we'd be somewhere between 5th and 10th, which sounds stupid, which sounds like a too big a gap. But if you look at, for instance, last year, where I think 9th, 10th, 11th all had 12 wins, or 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th all had 12 wins, whatever it was, it's not a big gap down to 10th. So I think we're contenders for the finals next year, but I wouldn't say under any circumstances we just become instant top 4 team or instant premiership contenders. And I don't think we were this year, even if everything had gone right. So I think we can at least be competitive, a bit more than competitive. I think we can worry a few top teams next year, and we should be in the mix at least for the finals at an absolute minimum.
Well, all the pundits had us 1 or 2 or certainly within the top 4 next year. I don't think they're going to be as kind to us. I think a lot of them will have us not making the 8. You'll have a couple here or there that put us in the 8 as just to be different to everyone else. But I don't know, Grapeviney, do we get back into finals next year?
I'm going to tip the scales in the favour of yes. I think we'll make the bottom part of the 8, 6th or 7th in the end.
We're going to be joined next year by Alan Richardson. Your thoughts on that, Super Mikado? I'll start with you.
Well, my understanding is that he's sort of the senior mentor to Simon Goodwin. Is that your understanding as well?
I don't think there has been any role assigned to him or any title as yet. He hasn't fronted any media yet or anything, so they haven't. I don't think there's been any label put on it. But yeah, I guess you can go for.
Well, the only reason I say is because I heard today that that's what he was discussing with Essendon, which it's kind of weird considering who the Essendon coach is, like won premierships and he hasn't. So if he was, and because there was a bit of a conspiracy theory that, oh, right, so Essendon's going to have a younger coach, are they? Because they're going to need this bloke to be the senior assistant. Which in that case, if that does happen, then I would probably ask why we can't have Gawn solo as a coach and then Viney, for instance, as a coach. Sorry,
okay.
Let's not go that far. Gawn as captain with Viney as the vice captain, being his sort of senior assistant in the leadership group, and just have Gawn flat out. If it's good enough for a senior coach, it's probably good enough for the captain as well. Again, without knowing what he's officially doing, it's hard to be certain about it, but he does come with great reputation as an assistant coach, and he was not a overly successful senior coach, but he was not a disaster of a senior coach either. So he probably has a lot of lessons that he can bring to the table to teach Goodwin and to teach the group as a whole. So that, look, I welcome it. There's no reason not to welcome it, but when it turns out that they've put him in some wacky role that has absolutely nothing to do with match day or something like that, then I might have a problem with it. He might take over Robbo's job hosting the Hames Paints segment at quarter time. But I can't think of a way that it's going to be a bad thing. Probably going to be a bad thing for Goodwin if we start next year badly and everyone starts to go, oh, there's an ex-senior coach standing right behind you. But hopefully we don't get to that.
I had 2 St Kilda supporters tell me 2 completely different things about him. One said he's great for development, but terrible with match day tactics and stuff like that. And then another St Kilda supporter said he was happy to see the back of him. So I don't know what to make of that.
But does any coach who didn't make the finals for however many years he was there, 6 years or 7 years, is never going to get
a glowing review.
Yeah, glowing reviews as a great match day tactician. So I think that he brings an experience of having been there and done that as well. So I think that as long as Goodwin and he are on the same page, and you would certainly think that Goodwin would have had to have a hand in hiring him. If he hasn't, then there's definitely questions to be asked. If they're just kind of plucking ex-senior coaches and sticking them in the box and going, hey, Simon, listen to this bloke. So I would think that Goodwin would have had a part of it. So they would understand more what he's going to bring to the table. And I think that, what I've heard as well is really good development coach. So, look, I would expect, my guess would be he's going to be in the box, not standing on the boundary line, patting people on the back as they come off the ground. I would think he'd be more behind the scenes rather than on the front line.
Grapeviney.
Look, not a lot to add to that. I've watched him used to watch him on AFL 360 on Coaches Night, and I've got to say he's never impressed me, sort of in his media role. But I'm someone who gets infuriated by the constant criticism of Simon Goodwin online in his press conferences, because I don't think that a coach's media performance has any bearing whatsoever on their coaching ability. So, look, we'll see what happens, I guess. Hope for the best.
I would still have preferred Mark Williams, just because I love Mark Williams after his choke yourself with a tie antics at the grand final that time, which is my all-time favourite non-Melbourne Football Club related moment in the history of football. So I would have loved to have got him in, but I understand he's probably a bit too wacky for the conservative Melbourne enterprise. Okay,
the other thing that came out today, it looks like, if you can believe the Herald Sun report, it sounds like that Ed Langdon from Fremantle has chosen us, and I guess it's just about now hashing out a deal with Fremantle, but it sounds like he's going to be in Demons colours next year. Any thoughts on that, boys? Grapeviney, I'll go to you first.
Well, he's a bit of a runner, isn't he? Or sort of an outside runner, winger type.
Yeah.
So we need that, definitely. So I don't know too much else about him. I know that there's been some criticism of his kicking.
Well, that was what I read in the article in the Herald Sun. I'll pull that up, what they said about him. Steve McGard, I'll go to you while I'm locating the article.
Well, I was going to say the same thing. My understanding is that he runs quick, but he's not a great kicker of the ball, which
fit him right in at the D's.
Exactly. On the surface of things, it doesn't sound like something that I'm particularly interested in. But you got to back that they know what they're looking for, and that he's got something that's going to help there. Can I just ask, while you're looking for that, what did everyone think of Stretch on the weekend? I actually think he showed some good signs.
Not impressed. And perhaps that's part of I guess I gave up on Stretch a number of games ago, and I just don't think he's got enough qualities to make it. I find him to be very vanilla.
Yeah,
I'm not suggesting he's a round one best 22 player, but I think he's definitely got something to offer as a depth player on the list.
Yeah, I've got no problem with him as depth player. My problem this year with our depth was the fact that we were playing a third of our depth all at once.
Yeah.
That's obviously not going to work. It's not going to work for any team. I think for the Ds, the comfort I take from the fact that we often had all of our depth players in is that we weren't getting blown off the park with those in. So I guess that's a good sign. But when you've got a third of your team as depth players, you're not going to win games. So he's higher up on the list than a few of those other depth players. Happy for him to come in and out of the team and plug holes. But yeah, I don't think he's best 22 at the moment. This is Ed Langdon in round 22 against Essendon. He won a career-high 37 possessions to go with his 161 metres gained. I'm assuming that's for the entire year. That doesn't sound like
many.
That's not a lot at all.
He enjoyed his best season of his career this year, averaging 86 ranking points for the Dockers, finishing with 4 stellar 100 ranking point games, which
if we're doing this on rankings points, I don't want anything to do with him. If that's the best they can find, rankings points, he can take his hair that gets tied so hard back that it looks like his forehead's going to have major trauma. I don't want any part of it if that's the best they can find.
But the thing that I took out of this, there's been conjecture about his kicking, which is so Melbourne. But Langdon went at a respectable 68% efficiency by foot this year, playing predominantly as a wingman. Yeah.
Surely being a wingman should be easier because you should have someone to kick it to, like a half forward leading up at you or something like that. I don't know. We wouldn't. So that's one problem he's going to have with us. I'm not exactly enthused about this, to be honest, but, you never know. If it's going to happen, we'll just have to trust the process again. And that's pretty much going to be the slogan for 2020. And just, hope that they know what they're doing and they're not going to overpay and get ransacked by Freo into paying, major currency for him.
I'm trying to do cartwheels about this, but they're not working out.
And just I know, Grapevine, you haven't been perusing the trade thread. Sort of any player that's up there has their own thread, and everyone on Demonland seems to think we're a chance to get any of it. But whenever you look at the articles, I'm not seeing our name, with the exception of Langdon, being linked to anyone else. We were there for Hill at one stage, but now we sort of know that's not a chance.
There was a Port player named on the AFL.
Never heard of him
today.
Before.
Carl Amon.
Yeah.
Carl Amon, yes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know him if he robbed me.
Yeah.
Straight, to be honest.
So I've heard his name before, but I've never heard it in context with any, anything good, to write home about. So we're not really linked to any big names.
Can I just give a rundown of everyone who's got a thread on the first page?
By all means.
There's Ed Langdon, Josh Bruce,
Oh, no.
Carl Amon. My computer's being very slow. Jack Watts, Hayden Young. I don't know who the hell Hayden Young is.
Yeah.
Cats into Petrarca, Jake Carlisle, Jack Martin, Jamie Elliott, Lachlan Ash, Tom Cutler, the very humorous Get Izzy Folau, and Josh Jenkins. They all get a thread on the first page.
Yep.
I like the Josh Jenkins thread goes back to April 13, 2016. So it's just carried on ever since. So good work to whoever just went and bought back an old thread instead of starting a totally new one.
Happens all the time. The Jack Martin one, there's 6 teams linked to him and none of them are us. I don't think we're linked to any of these players. So
I think we're shot for the salary cap.
Yeah.
Because Brad Hill, my understanding is that we've got nothing. Like St Kilda's got, stupid money in the tank to offer to players like that.
Sorry, Super Ricardo.
But I don't think we've got much room for an enormous, game-changing players to come in.
Yeah, I agree. So I don't know how much we're going to factor into this whole trade period. The other interesting thing that was brought up today, and I don't know if this was just someone in the media putting this out there. I doubt they would have got a leak from the Ds because we've been pretty good with that type of things. But there's the concept that we might split the picks. We might trade that pick 2, which is likely to be pick 3. And try to turn that into 2 first-round picks. Are you in favour of something like that, giving up pick 3 to get 11 and 9 and 11 or whatever it turns out?
Another incarnation of the Josh Kelly for
Correct.
Salem and Tyson, basically. So, it all depends on the personnel involved, doesn't it, I guess? And I haven't paid too much attention to what's going at the top end of the draft either, I've got to say. So I might pass on this discussion.
I think from reading that, it's pretty obvious that if they still get 2, then they're going to use it on the bloke who's, the standout.
Well, there's two standouts, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to use it on one of those 2. But if it's 3, then they're not as keen. But, again, you got to know what you might be getting. And I think with where we're at, do we really need draft picks? Like, yes, we need them, but are we desperate? Do we need 2? Or are we happy to get just 1 best possible and back the rest of the players in? Maybe they've done their maths and they say there's no difference between 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. And they think, well, we may as well get 2 of them. But surely other clubs have done that as well in that case. So why would another club, give up something like that? And you're not working with the GWS now that have picks out the wazoo. It's going to have to be a pretty complicated deal to get two top 10 picks out of 1 pick when everybody, except presumably Gold Coast, when we get screwed at the AFL Commission, is only going to have 1 pick in the top 10.
I think there was a team that does have two in the top 10.
Potentially, would Adelaide now where they finished, they've got Carlton's pick right below us, and then they might have one sort of at 10 or something like that.
Well, no, because I think they just swapped their first round picks. But there was someone, it might be GWS. Someone has two picks because they're from a swap, so they'll get two picks in the first round based on a swap from last year.
It's still a very difficult task to pull off. I'll pull up the indicative draft order, which the AFL website fortunately love posting about once a week. So we've got it goes Gold Coast, Melbourne, Adelaide, Sydney, St Kilda, Fremantle, North Melbourne, Carlton, Port Adelaide, Hawthorn. That's top 10.
It's 11 and 13. GWS have 11 and 13. But would you swap two for 11? And
no, you're certainly not. I mean, that's just too.
Yeah,
that's just
too
wacky.
Far out of the way. Yeah.
So, I mean, are we certain that Gold Coast is going to get picked too? Like, forget us. Like, they can shaft us till the cows come home, but surely Adelaide is going to hit the roof. And Adelaide's got more pull in this league than we do. Surely they're going to hit the roof if they go and went and did a pick for a future round with another team and then get shafted down one spot in the draft. I would like to think that, like I said, I don't think we've got the leverage in this league to go mental about it. But
particularly
I would like to think
with our history.
The Crows, well, yeah, but also, when you're us, you don't want to annoy the AFL too much because next thing you know, you're the Gold Coast Demons. But Adelaide have got enough oomph in this league to really kick up a stink about it, and I'm sure they will.
And we're also going to the commission cap in hand on the same day, but not to argue about their pick. I think we're there going to sort of perhaps ask for money or some kind of favours.
I don't know if that's right. I don't know whether we're going cap in hand. I think it's part of a routine presentation that clubs have to make.
Okay, it's our
as
turn.
part of their receipt of AFL assistance, which all clubs get.
Yeah,
but it's staggered, of course. And given the turmoil that we were in recently, I'm not surprised that we're in for a routine audit this time around, just to make sure that the wheels aren't falling off again.
But we're going to be crying poor a little bit because we're going to get a bad draw next year good draw in terms of maybe who we're playing, but a bad draw in terms of when we're playing, where
the hit's going to come.
The hit's going to come. Membership's going to be down at least 10 grand. In terms of people, if not more. We're going to get terrible time slots, not a lot of TV coverage, which is all fair enough.
We'll get the two blockbuster home games back, which I still can't believe. I still cannot believe that they managed to land both of those in the same season instead of having one blockbuster per year and then rotate it between the two. It's just, without knowing the inner workings, I don't know, but it just seems like absolute negligence not to have those years where you're basically, like next year, we're betting everything on having a good year and that we can get a good crowd. Anzac Eve is early enough in the season that it's not going to be hurt. Queen's birthday is when it starts to get a bit ropey. So if we get a duddish crowd to that, we don't make as much as we expect to make. And then you end up in a season like this year where you've got other big games at the end of the year that no one shows up to. Then you go into the next year when we don't have the home games in Queen's birthday and Anzac Day, and then you've got a team still not doing well, dropping more membership. I think it's insane. And selling the pokies, which is, I am so worried about that because that's big money that's going out the door that 2 years ago they might have thought, yep, no worries, we're going to cover this. Gary Pert said 8,000 extra members is $1 million in the pocket. So they were probably thinking, yeah, no drama, we'll have 20,000 extra members. Whereas now we might not. I think we might be going in cap in hand twice to the AFL.
There's an easy fix to the draw situation, and that's for the club to go to the AFL before the start of this season, before the working out of this year's draw, and forego one of the two matches next year. So only take one of Anzac Day or Queen's Birthday as a home day, and that way you put it one a year going forward.
Yeah,
so
and try and get some other like way to balance that out by get a MCG home games against Essendon and Carlton and stuff like that, and try and balance it out so that you still make up the 75,000 through other games as well, and then get it onto a split.
Yep. So it's a simple fix for the club to do it, and they should do it now.
Boys, is there anything else you want to bring up before
my lunch when I think about this season?
Well, I was going to take a more positive approach and say should we say a prayer for next season? Is there some kind of chant that we can do perhaps to get rid of the Norm Smith curse, or
I think we
just silently say our prayers and go into the night?
We've got to get to the bottom of this Norm Smith curse, because I think successfully didn't. Who had the curse in America? Was that the Boston Red Sox? Yeah. They're going to maybe take a leaf out of their book and exercise some demons. I don't know what we do, but boys, anything else? Anything positive to leave this season on?
Season's over. We've started the 1/3 of the best time of the year to be a Melbourne fan. We've done delist.
Yes.
Now we get on to trade, and then we get on to draft, and we come out of that thinking that we're the next big thing, and then hopefully the pre-season doesn't involve everybody toppling like 9 pins, and we get to round one with 99%, because no one ever gets to round one with their best 22. Someone always gets injured somewhere. We get to round one with 21 of our 22 best players, and we give next year a proper crack rather than the creeping death of this year. And the funny thing is, think back to round one, we were a red-hot chance of overrunning Port Adelaide in that game and didn't score in the last quarter. It's just hard to imagine that it's come to this, and it's not to say Port Adelaide are any good. They're obviously a confirmed middle-of-the-table team. But to go from that, the first 15 minutes of round one, we just looked like nothing had changed from last year. Tom McDonald took a mark and even just did a dinky 25-metre kick around the corner to Melksham so that he could kick the goal instead. They were playing all full of confidence, and then it came to the last quarter of that game and just went splat through the floor. We didn't score, and we've never been the same since.
Yeah, we had the same form at the start of JLT1, if you remember. Came out and looked like absolute millionaires. So appearances can be deceiving, and I can guarantee you that if we're down at quarter time in JLT1, the game day thread will be baying for Simon Goodwin's blood, and probably the rest of the
Goodwin, the right man thread will reach no TS, no BS levels of posting.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking what we should talk about. How long do you think Gould, if we have a disaster of a season, how long do you think before they pull the plug, or will they pull the plug this year or next year? Too early to say.
Depends what you define it as a disaster of a season. Everyone will have different definitions. I would like to think now, and I might change my mind when it actually happens next year, that if we go close to making the finals, if we're competitive into the last couple of weeks in making the finals, I'm not going to say we need to sack the coach for that reason, but plenty of people are going to say that. To me, I wouldn't do that. But if we're 1-7 or something like that, that's when, unfortunately, the pressure now seems to come too much on the clubs that they just have to feel like they have to do something. Like the joint will just be, a media circus for the next 20 weeks if they don't do something. So, if we get off to a really bad start 2 months into the season, I reckon he could be in trouble.
We've only announced 2 delistings. Do you think they're holding off with the others to see if they can offload some in trades or as steak knives, rusty or not? But I'm sure we will see more delistings before the season proper is out.
Well, as it is, we've got 4 off the senior list. And I'm not sure what Lockhart, I think he's on the senior list Now, I know Dunkley's a rookie, but I think Lockhart's a senior list player. So, yeah, that doesn't leave much space to play with for other players unless someone else is going to get delisted or someone's going to get traded. I would have thought there was at least one more. No offence to the man, but Jay Kennedy Harris, I just don't see. I feel about him like you guys feel about Stretch, that it just lacks the X factor. I think he will, if he wants to keep playing, he's the kind of guy that will go and get paid a fortune to smash it in local competitions, and will probably look really good at a lower level, but he just lacks that X factor at the higher level. I would have thought he won't make it, but again, yeah, they might be looking at what they're going to get in before they decide to shift people out.
Yep, agreed. I think
I don't want it to end on an anti-Jake Kennedy Harris theme. So could we just go with something else before we pull the pin?
Well, we can bring back a favourite segment of mine is which photo comes up on the Demon Wiki homepage.
No, you can't, because we don't have the random images anymore. So
what happened to that? So that was my favourite thing to do.
My technical guru did a change and it disappeared, unfortunately.
Very good. You haven't had any calls from the club with people complaining about what's on there? Or?
No, there hasn't been anything recently. Someone wrote into the club about my blog and complained about it, and the club had to carefully tell him to piss off. But actually, no, it was about my Twitter, and it wasn't even something related to footy. It was something related to horse racing.
And
that he took offence to, and he wrote into the club and CC'd me in, and asked them to suspend me.
Suspend you for what?
And sadly, the club didn't write back. Like, they didn't reply all if they replied.
Yeah.
I didn't get to see their response. But yeah, he wanted to be suspended from the Melbourne Football Club. Possibly thinking I was an official employee of the club, I'm not sure, or just wanted me suspended as a supporter. But sadly, that didn't happen, and I'm still there today.
Well, I'm pretty sure that there's quite a lot of people who follow Demonland on Facebook that actually think it's an official club account. And I put up a post today about our Demonland Player of the Year, and I'm pretty sure there were some people based on their comments that sort of might have been a little bit confused whether that was the Keith Bluey Truscott results. I just got that feeling by some of the comments. There were a lot of congratulations going on it, and I didn't think some of the Demonland Player of the Year probably warranted the congratulations of those players. But
they'll be baffled when they hear in 3 weeks' time or something what's actually happened.
Well, it probably will turn out to be pretty similar, at least
yes.
1 and 2.
You would think so. When is the best and fairest this year? I'm sure that we scheduled it well out of September. Not like about 5 years ago where we were scheduling in. I think the year 2016, when we had that like very long run at the finals, they actually had to put out a thing saying if we make the finals, we're going to have to move the date, because they booked it on like the second week of September.
I think if they have an inkling that we might be thereabouts, they book 2 dates and are able to maybe cancel it, but this year it is after the Monday after the grand final. Yep.
Well, they obviously weren't expecting grand final player celebrations to be going on. So.
Well, they booked that.
So hoping to roll it into the B&F. Do you reckon?
Yeah, that would have been. Yeah, it would have been if we got into a grand final and won. Yeah, that it would have been that date. That's the date they had picked.
They would have all shown up in costumes.
Yeah. All right, I think we might end it there tonight. Well, it's been a very interesting year, and one that we all would like to forget. I hope maybe.
What will you remember? Pick one. Give me one thing that you will remember in a good way this season for.
Well, I'll remember it as probably the year I was the most positive going into the season. I actually did think we would be top 4 this year. I thought we were going to be a great team. I know, Super McCarter, you probably didn't have that same expectation, but I did, and that's strange for me. I I almost had a blue with my family who wanted to go on a family trip in September, and I was like, nah, you go without me. This is an extended family trip. I said, no, I'm not going. And we decided not to go, and I had egg on my face. So.
Well, I'm going to go for Marty Hoare's goal against Gold Coast because we didn't know the season was entirely shot at that point. And I know that only drew the game, and obviously we shambled through a point to win it. But the shock and surprise of him kicking that goal, I think, was the highlight of the season for me.
And Grapevine, you?
I'm going to go with Max's game on the weekend because when all's said and done, it was a dead rubber, and a true champion keeps going regardless of the consequences. And he was at his very best on the weekend.
He is, and let's hope Maxi can squeeze himself into that All-Australian team, which is announced tomorrow night. Does deserve it, and I think it'd be a travesty if he doesn't make it. But we'll be back. I hope you boys might join me in trade week if you're available, and we can discuss what happens, and perhaps we do pull out a Smokey who can add some value to the team. All right, boys, thank you very much for the year, and we'll speak to you soon. Go D's.
Go D's.